And I wanted to transition to their next opponent, the San Francisco 49ers, another divisional opponent. And that NFC Championship game is going to be great. Again, a rematch of Week 18 between these two teams. But the San Francisco 49ers, such a fascinating story that they've had all year. Such a fascinating, gritty story. They're almost like the cockroach that just doesn't die. They just find new ways to win. And Saturday, they epitomized that. They upset the number one seed, not only in the NFC, but in the entire NFL playoffs. The Green Bay Packers on the road, 13-10 at Lambeau. So there are a few teams in the NFL that we've seen all season, and really over the course of the last couple seasons, that truly embody and embrace physicality. They embrace grit. They embrace the grind, the rugged mentality of an NFL football team. There are very few teams in the NFL that are truly gritty, that aren't flashy, don't really have many explosive plays, and yet just do a great job of mucking up the game. They just muddle up the game, and they force you to have to just wade through an entire football field. And that's the San Francisco 49ers. That's who they've been all year. That's who they've been the last several years. And for this team to have gone on the road to Lambeau Field, to play in the elements, to play in the conditions, not only the inclement weather, but you think about all the advantages that the Packers had, the fact that they were playing at home, coming off a bye, they were healthier. Some key defensive players for the 49ers were banged up. They had advantages pretty much across the board. And the fact that they managed to pull out this win in what seemed like an improbable victory for this team, the fact that 90% of the field for over half the game was covered in white snow, it was extremely impressive and extremely commendable. And again, I have to pay them their respects, because we've always said about the San Francisco 49ers that they've had the personnel to match a lot of the talent level on most teams. They really have. When you look at this roster from top to bottom, they've always had the personnel to compete. There hasn't always been a glaring disparity between the majority of the positions, the coaching. Normally, the one question mark was with Jimmy G, the quarterback position. Now, some people don't think he's a top 10 quarterback. I don't think he's a top 10 quarterback, but I've always said that I do believe he is a winning quarterback, and certainly the database backs that up at this point. But the problem was with the 49ers, they just didn't execute at the beginning of the year. Started off 3-5, but they finished the last 2 months going 7-2, heading into the postseason to pilfer a postseason berth, and they've maximized it. 2 road games, 2 road victories. And let's remember that it was only 2 years ago that this similar San Francisco 49ers team, a very similar iteration of this team, reached the Super Bowl. It wasn't that long ago. And now they're returning back to the NFC Championship Game 2 years later. And to me, for the 49ers, and I'll touch on the Packers in a moment, they relied on a couple key areas and individuals. They relied on their special teams, which was the one key advantage they had coming into this matchup. They relied on their defense, Nick Bosa, Fred Warner, and the secondary being able to hold up, and Deebo Samuel. And I was talking about lacking the superlatives to praise Mahomes and Allen. I think the same can be said for Deebo Samuel. I've said this. I've praised him profusely for weeks on end. I've always been bullish about this guy. He is not only the ultimate Swiss Army knife, but one of the most talented and skillful NFL players that we've seen. And the fact that he's able to thrive every single position, every spot on the football field is absolutely amazing. I mean, the guy is just getting mauled out there. Let's be honest. He's getting beat into hell. taking hit after hit after hit. He's being bruised and bludgeoned. Multiple defensive linemen falling on top of him. Kyle Shanahan initially played him at the running back position more out of desperation and necessity because they were depleted at the running back position, more so than, oh, let's just put one of our best wide receivers in the backfield to get absolutely massacred back there. And instead, Shanahan saw the effectiveness several weeks ago and said, well, yeah, I can ride Elijah Mitchell, but why don't I continue to use these direct handoffs or these tosses or these little setup screens to Deebo Samuel and just let the guy go? I mean, the guy is the ultimate hybrid wide receiver running back workhorse, but it's more than that because the guy had 10 rushes for 39 yards, 3 receptions for, I think, for 44 yards. He also was on the kickoff return team, had 2 kickoff returns for over 50 yards. The guy was being utilized every single place on the field. And you combine that with the defense did a tremendous job sacking Aaron Rodgers 5 times, forcing 2 fumbles, 1 fumble recovery. Can't give enough credit to the San Francisco 49ers. But now I have to transition to the Packers. Now, let me first say that the game-winning field goal that they conceded, the fact that they were so clueless and unprepared to only have 10 guys trot out onto the field in that instance is beyond me. They're not on the road. You're at home. You practice those situations. And for them to not have seen that they were missing a guy on the field, a potential additional body to get a hand up on Robbie Gould, that's an indictment against the coaching staff. That's an indictment on just that whole team not being ready and not clearly counting how many guys are on the field in that critical spot of the game. That's first of all. But the problem was the Packers offensively were just stuck in the mud. They couldn't get the engine to start. It was too cold out there for them to start the engine. When you live in the Midwest, when you live in the East Coast, you know you have to turn on your car about 20 minutes before you actually intend to use it. When it's in the driveway, let it rev up, let it heat up, and then you can hop on in the car and it's able to drive away. The Packers, it's like it got jump-started for the first series when they led 7-0, and then they couldn't ignite the engine anymore. And this is, unfortunately, a poor reflection on Aaron Rodgers in this instance. And I understand that not all of the shortcomings fall on Aaron Rodgers. Wasn't his fault that Mercedes Lewis fumbled the ball. Wasn't his fault for the multiple special teams gaffes, the blocked field goal, the punt that is blocked and returned for a touchdown. Those aren't his fault. That's true. I will concede that. But the bottom line is he had ample chances throughout the entire early evening and through the entire night to lead his team to scoring more points. And he just failed to deliver again in the postseason. And he is still fantastic, and I still believe in Aaron Rodgers. But right now, this is an indictment on who he's been the last couple years in the postseason. The fact that he constantly settled for the little check down. I understand the inclement weather, the weather conditions played a factor, but the fact that he was a little bit unwilling to take some bigger chances, and again, just resorted to dropping it down to running backs or some of his wide receivers for 5-6 yard completions. He averaged 4.8 air yards per pass on average. So I understand that a lot of the focus is going to be on those special team gaffes, but again, you can't ask your defense, in my opinion, to play any better than the Packers defense played. They sacked Jimmy 4 times. They had an interception. On 4th and 1, when the 49ers are knocking on the door of potentially potentially tying this game up, down 10-3 with 6 minutes to go in the fourth. Packers defense stops them, shuts the door on them on 4th and 1, and you get the ball back, and immediately you 3 and out. Obviously, that's what led to the punt, but you go 3 and out right after that defense came up with a tremendous stop. And then even when it's tied 10-10, again you go 3 and out. So if the Packers want to blame, or Aaron Rodgers wants to blame anyone, you just have to look yourself in the mirror. And he just didn't deliver and execute when they needed to. And the reality is, it was still tied 10-10. They had plenty of time to regroup. The Rams did it. The Packers did it. And when these two teams played in the regular season, it was just as hotly contested back then at Candlestick. But the difference was it was 28-27 49ers after Jimmy G led what at the time was thought to be perhaps a game-winning drive. And Aaron Rodgers led the Packers in 36 seconds into field goal range. So he's capable of doing that. There's no question about it. He's capable of doing it. But he just didn't do it. He didn't deliver. There was only one area in this game, again, that the 49ers had a decisive advantage over the Packers entering this game. That was special teams. Quarterback, obviously Rodgers is better than Jimmy G. Running back position, I like Elijah Mitchell. Sure, Deebo Samuel can line up in the backfield, but it's really a carousel at the running back position for Coach Shanahan. Packers, Aaron Jones, who's been a Pro Bowl running back, and A.J. Dillon, who's emerging as a really good power back in the NFL. Wide receivers, I love Deebo, and obviously George Kittle are great, but no one's going to make the claim they're better than Devontae Adams. Maybe coaching, I'd give a narrow edge to Kyle Shanahan, maybe more than a narrow edge now over Matt LaFleur. Defensively, both teams are great. Special teams was the one glaring disparity. That's about it. So there really aren't too many excuses at this point, and now Rodgers has lost all 4 meetings versus the 49ers in the postseason. And, he said that the 49ers would rue the day that they passed on him in the draft. That hasn't happened yet. We haven't seen that yet. And again, the 49ers are showing this unwillingness and unrelenting ability to persevere and win. And now they set themselves up with a great opportunity against a familiar foe in the Rams next week in the NFC Championship game. But credit to the 49ers for just coming to play and battling through those elements. I mean, again, about 90% was a snowstorm by the end of it. And it was just a fun game to watch. And Robbie Gould delivers again, perfect in his postseason career. Just exhibiting a great ability to win.